Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, the 32nd President of the United States, stands as one of the most consequential figures in American history. His presidency, spanning from 1933 until his death in 1945, encompassed two of the gravest crises the nation ever faced, the Great Depression and World War II. Through bold reforms, innovative governance, and unparalleled wartime leadership, Roosevelt redefined the scope of the presidency and transformed the role of the federal government in American society. His tenure illustrates the ways in which decisive leadership can reshape a nation in moments of peril. The Great Depression and Roosevelt's first inauguration. By the time Roosevelt assumed office in March 1933, the United States was in the depths of the Great Depression. Nearly 1/4 of the workforce was unemployed, banks were failing, industrial production had collapsed, and confidence in the economic system was shattered. His inaugural address struck a tone of resilience and defiance, reassuring Americans that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. More than rhetoric, however, he immediately signaled an activist government determined to restore hope and stability. Within his first 100 days, Roosevelt pushed through a flurry of legislation that would become known as the First New Deal. His administration closed failing banks temporarily, inspected them for solvency, and restored confidence with the Emergency Banking Act. The Glass-Steagall Act established federal deposit insurance, protecting citizens' savings and stabilizing the financial system. Through such measures, Roosevelt demonstrated his belief that government intervention was essential to rescue the economy. Share the New Deal, transforming government's role. The New Deal was the hallmark of Roosevelt's domestic agenda. It was not a single program, but a series of evolving initiatives aimed at relief, recovery, and reform. Relief measures sought to provide immediate assistance to the unemployed and impoverished. Agencies like the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, and Works Progress Administration, WPA, hired millions for public works projects, building roads, schools, parks, and infrastructure that modernized the nation. Recovery programs focused on stabilizing key sectors. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, AAA, attempted to raise crop prices by reducing surpluses, while the National Industrial Recovery Act, NIRA, sought to regulate industry, stabilize wages, and encourage collective bargaining. Though some initiatives faced constitutional challenges, they reflected Roosevelt's experimental approach. He was willing to try bold policies, discard failures, and pursue new strategies. Reform measures permanently changed the structure of American society and government. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, regulated stock markets to prevent abuses that contributed to the 1929 crash. The Social Security Act of 1935 created pensions for the elderly, unemployment insurance, and aid for the disabled, embedding social welfare into the American system. For the first time, the federal government assumed responsibility for the economic security of its citizens. Expanding presidential power. Roosevelt's leadership during the Depression also transformed the presidency itself. He developed the fireside chats, radio addresses that explained his policies directly to the American people in plain language. This innovative communication style created a personal bond with millions, making him a trusted voice in times of uncertainty. At the same time, Roosevelt expanded the power of the executive branch. He established new federal agencies, oversaw massive public spending, and asserted leadership in economic policymaking. Critics accused him of overreach, especially when he proposed a controversial plan to add more justices to the Supreme Court after several New Deal laws were struck down. Though that court-packing scheme failed, it signaled his determination to ensure his agenda's survival. Ultimately, the court shifted toward upholding New Deal legislation, further entrenching Roosevelt's reforms. Preparing for global conflict. Even as Roosevelt grappled with the Depression, he recognized the growing threat of fascism abroad. The 1930s saw the rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy, and militarist expansion in Japan. Public opinion in the U.S., however, was strongly isolationist, scarred by the memory of World War I. Roosevelt had to tread carefully, balancing the need to strengthen defenses with the public's reluctance to become entangled in foreign wars. He supported measures like the Neutrality Acts to limit involvement, while simultaneously urging greater preparedness. As Europe edged closer to conflict, Roosevelt worked to aid allies without direct involvement. The cash and carry provision allowed Britain and France to purchase arms if they transported them themselves. After the fall of France in 1940, Roosevelt took more decisive action, launching the Lend-Lease program to supply Britain and later the Soviet Union with vital war materials. These steps helped sustain nations resisting Axis aggression while buying the US time to build its own military strength. Roosevelt's wartime leadership. The attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 thrust the United States fully into World War II. Roosevelt rallied the nation with his declaration that the date would live in infamy, and Congress declared war on Japan, soon followed by declarations against Germany and Italy. Roosevelt immediately became the commander-in-chief of a global war effort unprecedented in scale. His leadership in mobilizing the economy was remarkable. Factories that had been idle during the Depression roared back to life, producing tanks, planes, and ships. The War Production Board coordinated industry, while rationing and price controls ensured resources were allocated for the war effort. Unemployment vanished, and the economy surged, illustrating the transformative power of wartime mobilization. On the international stage, Roosevelt worked tirelessly to build alliances with British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. He formed the Grand Alliance. At conferences in Casablanca, Tehran, and Yalta, Roosevelt helped shape military strategy and post-war planning. He supported the strategy of Germany first, focusing on defeating Hitler before turning fully to the Pacific theater. He backed the invasion of North Africa, the D-Day landings in Normandy, and coordinated with allies to ensure a united front. Roosevelt also looked ahead to the post-war world. He was a driving force behind the creation of the United Nations, envisioning it as a mechanism to maintain peace and prevent the recurrence of global conflict. His internationalism laid the groundwork for America's role as a leader in global affairs after 1945. Challenges and controversies. Roosevelt's presidency was not without criticism and controversy. Some conservatives condemned the New Deal as an overextension of federal power that threatened free enterprise. Business leaders accused him of hostility toward capitalism. Meanwhile, some liberals argued the New Deal did not go far enough in addressing inequality. During the war, Roosevelt faced moral and political dilemmas. One of the most controversial decisions was the internment of Japanese Americans, a policy upheld by the Supreme Court at the time, but later widely recognized as a grave injustice. Roosevelt justified it on national security grounds, but it remains a stain on his record of leadership. He also confronted challenges in balancing the demands of a two-front war, managing relations with Stalin, and planning for a post-war order that would inevitably include tensions between the US and the Soviet Union. These complexities underscored the enormous burdens of wartime leadership. The legacy of Roosevelt's presidency. Roosevelt's impact on American history is profound. Domestically, he redefined the relationship between citizens and government. The New Deal's programs established a safety net and regulatory framework that endure to this day. Social Security, federal labor protections, and financial regulations remain cornerstones of American public policy. Internationally, Roosevelt guided the United States from isolationism to global leadership. His wartime diplomacy and vision for the United Nations shaped the international order of the mid-20th century. His belief in collective security and international cooperation became hallmarks of post-war U.S. foreign policy. Perhaps most importantly, Roosevelt provided leadership that gave Americans confidence in times of despair. His ability to inspire, to reassure, and to act boldly left an enduring impression of what presidential leadership can achieve. He remains the only president elected to 4 terms, a testament to the trust the American people placed in him during tumultuous times. His death in April 1945, just weeks before victory in Europe, deprived him of seeing the final defeat of fascism, but his legacy lived on in the peace and prosperity that followed. Conclusion. Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency was defined by crisis and transformation. He assumed office at a moment when capitalism itself seemed on the brink of collapse, and guided the nation toward recovery through bold experimentation. He then led the country through the most destructive war in history, building alliances, mobilizing resources, and laying the foundation for a new international order. Roosevelt's legacy is not without flaws, but his achievements in redefining the federal government's role, expanding the presidency, and steering the nation through depression and war make him one of the most significant leaders in American and world history. He demonstrated that in moments of profound challenge, leadership requires courage, adaptability, and vision. In doing so, he left an enduring mark on both the United States and the world.